Good morning, Tuscaloosa, afternoon, Tuscaloosa, West Alabama, internet world, anywhere that you're listening to the Joe Gaither Show right here on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com. Hope you guys are having a beautiful Thursday so far. We've had a fun week on the program. You've listened to us on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, and on Amazon. You're watching us on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter. Of course, you can find us at Joe Gaither6 on any and all the social media machines. We want to say a big thanks to Sutton Smith for joining us yesterday, WVUA's digital reporter, talking college football playoff, Alabama basketball, Jalen Milroe, and much, much more. We've had a lot of fun this week talking about Alabama. Big old win over Kentucky, and then basketball having a big old win against Indiana State and setting up a win over South Alabama as well. But now it's time to dial back in and talk about football. Alabama football is playing a game on Saturday at 11 a.m., and we are pleased to be joined by Gene Henley today. You can follow him at Gene Henley3 on the X machine, on the Twitter machine. He covers UTC for the Chattanooga Times-Free Press, my hometown paper, and I am very happy to welcome in Gene Henley today to talk UTC. Gene, how are you doing, sir?
Oh, man, life is great, man. I hope it is for you as well.
Absolutely. It's very good. Very good. Just want to ask you about a check in with the hometown. How's Chattanooga been? I haven't really lived there since 2010 or so, but basically that will always be home for me. And just give us an update. How is Gig City?
Gig City, the Scenic City, whatever you want to call it. It's good here. I actually live about 30 minutes away in Cleveland, but obviously the whole area is it's thriving, it's flourishing. It's one of the nice days, and it's one of those seasons where I think Alabama's kind of like this as well, and where if you don't like the weather one day, just give it like 3-4 days, and it'll kind of get where you want it to be. And I'm looking outside; it's beautiful outside today, and yeah, man. I mean, it's a Scenic City for a reason.
It doesn't feel like November 16th, not even here in Tuscaloosa. It feels a little earlier in the calendar, but we're sitting here 2 weeks left in the football season, and it's the last week of football for Eugene Henley, at least regular season wise. UTC is finishing up its season; they're 7-3 so far, and can we call this a top 25 matchup? The Mocs are number 16 in the college in the FCS coaches poll. What's been the story of the UTC season so far? I've got a couple of family members who went there and graduated. They said, Joe, we've beaten all the bad teams. We've lost every good team. So what's been the UTC story of the season so far this year?
It's been a little bit better of a season than that. Like the problem, like it's one of those deals where at the FCS level, you're only judged on whether or not you're one of the 24 teams that makes the playoff. But Chattanooga, for the second consecutive years, won 7 straight games. I would actually liken Chattanooga's football history to that of, like, say, a Kentucky or something like that, where there's a bigger basketball brand at the university, but the football base is demanding a level of success that they really haven't seen before. If you go back to the last time that Chattanooga played Alabama, that was 2016. That was the top 10 Chattanooga team in the country that I believe had like 7 or 8 players that got drafted or played in the NFL off that team. That was a really good team. That team got beat 31-3 by Bama. It wasn't really close, although the funny graphic is going around that Chattanooga was winning 3-0 after a quarter. But like they did beat Mercer this year, and Mercer finished their season 8-3. That's likely a playoff team. They lost by 2 points to Western Carolina. They scored 50, but gave up a last-second field goal. They lost 17-14 to the number 2 team in the country. So the answer as to what this team is probably somewhere like a good to really good team that has struggled in some big moments and lost some really tight games. And their biggest loss was actually, we'll see what Saturday is, but their biggest loss was actually the first game of the season against North Alabama. And that was North Alabama's second game of the season. And Chattanooga made a lot of first game mistakes and just, didn't play well. So I would say it's been a successful season, but if they were an FBS team playing like in Sun Belt or Conference USA, they'd be preparing for a bowl here in a couple of weeks. But at their level, it may or may not be good enough, and that won't be evident until about 12:30, 1 o'clock on Sunday.
Yeah, it's basically bubble time for UTC, and I guess for the casuals or people who just follow the bottom line, you're going to wake up Saturday. Alabama fans are going to wake up and see 7-3, and they're going to see second in the Southern Conference, and going to say, okay, FCS program doesn't stand a chance, and they likely don't. But you played Furman last week, as you alluded to, number 2 team in FCS, and really, what was it, 17-14? It was a close ball game. Very defensive game. It seems like UTC is right there on the precipice, on the edge of really competing at a high level in FCS.
It's going to happen. I mean, I think regardless of what happens over the next 72 hours, barring the portal, they're going to return 9 offensive starters and I believe 8 defensive starters next year. Things could obviously happen. The quarterback will be back next year, and he's really good. All 3 of the receivers have at least 1 year. 2 of them still have 2 years left. They return 4 offensive linemen, a talented tight end. They lose 2 running backs, and that hurts. But then they return 8 starters on defense. The 2 edge rushers are out. A corner from Alabama. He's from Mobile. He's gone, but everybody else is back, and so it's going to happen. Chattanooga fans will say, well, we've heard that before, but it's a little different this year. I mean, the end of 2023, the start of 2024, it's one of those weird I can't talk now, weird deals where defining success is kind of, dependent on who's the person defining it. I would say it's successful. I would say they're on the cusp of being really good to great. But again, you're either in the playoffs or you're not, and everything else is kind of a failure.
Well, how do you think it's going to play out on Sunday when the playoff field is announced? Do you think UTC is going to be one of their 24 teams? I know they're right there kind of on the bubble.
Yeah, it's all going to be dependent on, I think, some of Saturday's results. One of the teams they actually lost to, Western Carolina, has kind of been fading a little bit towards the end of the season. But, if they somehow lose, then they have the same record as Chattanooga. They'd have 1 fewer conference victory, but they will have lost to, but they would have struggled down. They would have beat Chattanooga, but they'd have 1 fewer conference victory. Then you've got Mercer, who has 1 more win than Chattanooga in the regular season, beat the team that Chattanooga lost to, but they lost to Chattanooga. So how do you define that? The question will be, will their conference get 4 teams in? And that seems to be, if they get 4, then obviously Chattanooga's in. But, what's the perception of the conference? You really only feel good about one of the teams, Furman, who, obviously won the league. It's undefeated. It's number 2 in the country. You only feel good about that team. Everything else from this point forward, I believe, is going to just kind of be up to the hands of that 12, 13 person committee.
Well, we're talking to Gene Henley, writer for the Chattanooga Times-Free Press. You can follow him at Gene Henley3 on the Twitter machine, on the X machine. We appreciate him giving us some of his time today, talking UTC, as it is Alabama's last home game this weekend, Saturday at 11 a.m. You alluded to the nice passing game, and the quarterback Chase Artopoulos, a four-year player at UCLA, didn't really play a whole lot, and the receivers as well. Number 15 in FCS for passing yards per game, and Artopoulos is number 9 in FCS as far as passing goes. Coach Saban last night talking about the passing game and talking about UTC, saying that these receivers are now, obviously, you take it with a grain of salt, but saying these receivers are SEC caliber receivers. Tell us about really the passing game that Alabama's going to be facing. I mean, has already played Texas, has already played LSU, so you've played some of the better FBS passing games in the country. But really, what's the challenge that Artopoulos, I just had the other names, Javon Whitley, Sam Phillips, and Jamoy Mays will be bringing into Bryant-Denny Stadium?
Yeah, and I think, Deion's kid said something about it at the beginning of the season. He was asked the difference between FCS, FBS, and it's up front. And that's the challenge. That's where that'll really kind of define if I'd imagine if Chase has time to throw, he could be pretty mostly, successful with those receivers. I'm not out here trying to predict 300-yard games. I'm not stupid, but I mean, defining success is, kind of relevant. I mean, it's relative in this case. Um, Jamoy Mays is an FBS receiver. I know obviously his direct messages get very active when seasons end. I know that for a fact. The Watley kid is a slot receiver. I think he had a game. I think he had 230 yards and like 4 touchdowns in a game earlier this year. He's short. He's quick. He's perfect in the slot. Their third receiver is Sam Phillips, who was a freshman All-American last year. He's a little bit more of a possession guy this year. I think he's only averaging like 10, 11 yards a catch, whereas the other two are averaging like 17, 18. It's a talented passing attack. And, it's one of those things where you kind of hope that that gets a chance to show itself in the playoffs. But if it may not. But I think there's going to be like just maybe one moment that stands out on Saturday. And again, like you judge games like this, in my opinion, I'm not out here again. I'm not predicting upsets like Alabama versus Chattanooga. I refuse to be that person. Chattanooga has played Bama 3 times under Saban. They scored 3 points.
Yeah.
They've been beat 49-0, 45-0, and 31-3. And 2 of those 3 teams were ranked top 10, top 15 in the country when they played Bama. So I'm not acting as though they're going to win. So you judge success off plays, off moments, off a drive. And I think that they have the potential to do some of that because they're going to have to, because the rushing attack is just not quite what it's been the previous few years.
We hit on the rushing attack, and UTC had kind of a bad, unfortunate incident, or not incident, but a limp forward towards ACL. The leading running back for UTC towards ACL against Mercer. So, 3 weeks ago? How has that really impacted the UTC running game?
Yeah, a limb was probably going to break the all-time score, the school record for rushing yards. I think he was 124 yards away from breaking it. Very unfortunate. He actually tore it. I don't remember exactly when he tore it. I think it was maybe against Western Carolina. Maybe if I felt like he was a step slow all year. And he averaged over like a 4 or 5 year span, he averaged 20 carries a game. So like that just culmination of just beating and beating. And he was not there was nothing that he did elite. He was just a hard running back. And where that changed was, obviously when your greatest talent is your try hard, then and you start to, you don't have the same sort of natural instincts that you can use, and you're getting slower and slower, it just has an effect. But they've got a couple of backs. Gino Appleberry transferred from Western Kentucky. I think he was there for like a year. He's been there for 4 years. He's certainly played a lot better as of late. They've got a sophomore from, I want to say Alabama, somewhere in Alabama. He was a 3-star prospect, Reggie Davis, really talented back. He's a sophomore. He's just now getting on the field.
Broke off a big run against BMI.
Yeah, and he's definitely the most talented back in that room, and a lot will be expected of him next season, and whatever remains of this year as well. But it's not the same rushing attack. A couple years ago, they had to lean on it very heavily. They didn't feel as strong about the quarterback play, but it's not the same rushing attack. And can it be effective? Can it have some moments? Can it do something great? And I think that's kind of why they've used some of the quick passing game to a Phillips on the outside, a Jamoy Mays. You hope they break a tackle and maybe get some extra yards after catch. But they're having to use like the passing attack as an extension of the rushing attack, just because they're just not quite as good there.
We're talking to Gene Henley, writer for the Chattanooga Times-Free Press. You've been covering sports for Chattanooga Times-Free Press since 2008, and you've already brought up the 2016 matchup between Alabama and UTC. Nick Saban brought that up as well twice this week now, yesterday in his post-practice press conference, talking about, I was watching that game, and it was 3-0 in the second quarter, and he said it on the flip side way, talking about the good players that Alabama had on the field that day, basically saying that UTC needs to be respected and should be taken seriously. Take us back to your memories for 2016. Obviously, you've hit on it just a touch, but what do you remember about that 2016 game, and kind of just what goes into when a team like UTC plays a big-time FBS opponent?
Man, it was funny because it was a little similar to this year, whereas, tomorrow, the day after the game, they'll find out their playoff fate. But they knew they were in 2018 or 2016. So I felt like they played very just kind of, we're going to try to make some plays, kind of have some moments. They had that opening drive that led to a field goal. I can't remember if there's if Jalen Hurts threw a pick or something like that, but there was something that happened that either forced a punt or whatever. And again, like that was a Chattanooga team that had a really good quarterback. He got hurt at the beginning of the 2017 season, or I thought he would have had a chance. I'm trying to remember something. They had an offensive lineman that I believe is still with the Titans. Cole Strange, who was the first round draft pick of the Patriots, was redshirting that year. They had a defensive lineman, like they had, linebackers. They had a safety that's now playing. It's a backup linebacker for the Falcons now. They had some talented players on that roster, and so that I remember that being a very, very methodical first drive of the game. I don't think they threw a pass further than about maybe 4 yards and just maybe hope for the best.
Yeah, I have plays 50 yards on 5.5 minutes for that.
They were like, it was going to be a very methodical, because I mean, again, like you can say what you want about your talent, and like I said, they had seniors, they had like 2-3 All-Americans on that offensive line, and they were not about to act as though we were going to sit here and dominate the front against Alabama's front. Because I don't remember who it was. Maybe it was a Quentin Williams. I don't remember who was on that line, but it was obviously a talented front because it's Alabama. That's the standard of college football. However people want to frame it with Georgia or whatnot, Bama is still the standard until Saban retires. And so they weren't out here trying to reinvent the wheel with anything crazy. They were methodical. They got some points, and they walked away feeling happy about it. And yeah, I do remember Saban during the week had made a comment that year that, hey, this is an SEC defense, and people laughed at them. They made fun of them. So, the fans thought it was just coach speak. And so I think, what should be understood with Saban is when I don't think he just makes these comments just to appease people. Like when he spoke about, our Topus in the passing attack, I think it had a value. When he spoke about Jay Person earlier this week, I think that had a value. Like that man's seen a lot of college football, and I think he understands a good player when he sees it.
Absolutely. And so we're going to be looking forward to UTC coming to Tuscaloosa at 11 a.m. on Saturday. You can follow us right here at BamaCentral.com for all kinds of coverage, and follow Gene Henley for the other side's perspective at the Chattanooga Times-Free Press. So what does a good day, obviously the idea that is the next day on Sunday. What happens with the playoff fate on Sunday for UTC? And Alabama's sort of in that same boat a couple of weeks down the road on the playoff bubble. But what's it going to be on Saturday? Like, okay, Saturday, 3:30 p.m. The game is over. Zero's on the scoreboard. Oh, you're the UTC's in the locker room. What does a good day look like for UT? Obviously, the win is the greatest day, but that 45.5-point underdog, we're not going to sit here and say that that's very likely. What's a good day look like for the Mocs?
I think it's going to be judged by plays, by moments. Can you find a drive that leads to a field goal? Can you find a drive that leads to a touchdown? Can your defensive back get to not your defense back. Can your defense get to the quarterback? Can Jay Person strengthen his case to get drafted by getting to the quarterback or getting into the backfield? Can Ben Bruton, the other edge rusher, those two have a combined 14.5 sacks this year, can they find a way to get to the pass rusher? Can Cam Brown, the Alabama native, that's a cornerback, can he find a way to pick off a pass, 3.5 hours from home? Can the offensive line have a moment? Can one of the receivers have a now that's kind of how I would judge success, because it's not going to be judged on the scoreboard. So can you have some moments to where you say, you know what, if we do get in the playoffs tomorrow, we've built some momentum based off of what we do. Like you're finishing the season playing the standard of college football. You're finishing your FCS season playing the standard of college football. Can somebody watch that game that maybe is trying to make a decision as to whether or not Chattanooga belongs in the playoffs or not, and say it's kind of hard to keep a team, top 15, top 20 team in the country that's doing this, that's got the game 10-3 in the third quarter with the ball, Whether Bama goes on to win that game 31-3 or not, it's they're 10-3. They got the ball midfield. That 80,000 starting to get a little restless. Those call-in shows. I've heard those call-in shows after a Bama Chattanooga game. They're very interesting. Those call-in shows, those lines are already starting to lighten up a little bit. Can they do something that either A, elicits fear, some level of fear in the fan base, or causes, frustration, or B, can they just do some stuff to where they say, we can package that stuff away because we're never going to play another team the rest of the way that looks like this?
Well, if Alabama gives up a first down or ends up punting, you're going to have the Alabama fans. Oh, fire Tommy Rees. Oh, fire Kevin Steele. This team, yada, yada. They'll
It
go
was
off.
Kiffin. Yeah, it was Kiffin in 2016. I did see, I think some fans the other day had brought up how Saban blew up on Kiffin on the sidelines, and that was like one of the small victories for them. And then, like I said, the field goal, there's probably a turnover. Maybe I think Keontae Davis, the D-line that played for the Patriots for a little bit, I think he may have had a sack or something, but there were little moments that just caused some grumblings because you go into that game. I get it. When you're Bama, it doesn't matter who the FCS team. I don't care if it's North Dakota State or South, whoever the FCS team may be. You're not going into a game against a team that is 2 divisions lower because let's be honest, there's Power 5, there's Group of 5, there's FCS. You're not going into that game thinking that this game is going to be close in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
So anything that, like I said, that's why I say anything that they can do positively, anything that causes some frustration to other teams' fan base is yes, anything is possible. I feel like the program has grown a little bit since 2007, but certainly I think Joe certainly appreciates you listening in, and I certainly appreciate you listening because I don't know why I want to listen to me, listen to Joe, but please listen to Joe. But yeah, like anything is certainly possible. I think that if Chattanooga, I'll answer it this way: if Chattanooga somehow finds a way to beat Bama, then I think that there are going to be a lot of questions that need to be asked. Let's just say that. Like, I don't expect it to happen. Nobody expects it to happen. But there will be a lot of conversations on Sunday morning and Saturday around 3:30. Like, I'm pretty sure college football would stop it would pause. Like Tennessee, I think, plays Georgia. I think that game would just stop. And I don't want to live that life because I'm more of a basketball person. I do not want my my Saturday afternoon and my Sunday to be taken up by people that are begging for 5-10 minutes of my time asking what happened against Bama. So anything's possible, anything can happen, but judge the small victories and take it from there.
Well, on that track, and as we kind of wrap this bad boy up today, Coach Saban on Monday said this game was a kind of a game that the UTC players dream about. It was his comment. They dream about games like this. And some of us in the room thought, oh, Coach, that might be a little belittling to the UTC players. I mean, obviously we don't know them, and you know them better than we do. So just ask your perspective. Do you think that is maybe a belittling perspective, or is this kind of a moment that UTC or just the proverbial conceptual FCS player dreams about coming to Bryant-Denny Stadium? I mean, because we're not dumb. You said it, and the players, they know themselves. They know what the line is on Saturday. Yeah, they could win any given Saturday, but like what's likely is not going to go in their favor on Saturday. Is that something that they really dream about, or is this really kind of, okay, let's collect the check for our school and and everybody get out of here without an injury?
I think SCS players treat them playing in FBS environments because that's what they always wanted to do. I mean, nobody grows up saying, I want to play at UTC. They say they want to play at Tennessee. Nobody grows up saying they want to play at Jacksonville State, North Alabama, or I understand Jack State, but or UAB. They want to play at Bama or Auburn. Like I think the bigger picture there point is that, yeah, like, I mean, but specifically Bama, yeah, I mean, I get it. They're the standard of college football, but I think Bama could be, I think Chattanooga starts the season off with Tennessee next year. Bama could be Tennessee. You know, Josh Heupel could say the same thing. I believe they play Georgia State next year. Oh God, I don't remember who the coach's name is. He beat Tennessee in 2019 when I was covering Tennessee. he could say the same thing. Like these guys, these players, they dream of, they grow up watching those 15, 20 players from Alabama. They grew up wanting to play at either Bama or Auburn, or maybe it was a Tennessee, maybe it was a Georgia, but you get my point. I think it's one of those comments where you're like, it may have felt wrong in the room when he said it. I do understand what he's saying. He just used Bama as a specific case, but I think that his larger point there is, yeah, they want to play in this moment because they do understand what playing well in this moment means, and I think that's the dream. But I mean, Jay Person went to Appalachian State out of high school. Amarian Krim, who is an offensive lineman for Chattanooga, and grew up in Adamsville. I don't know. He played at Minor High School which is close to Tuscaloosa. He went to Houston. He transferred from he grew up in he played at Houston for a little while. They've got a ton of guys who have played at this level. So yeah, there's a dream of obviously wanting to get to that level, but I don't think it's specific to Alabama as much as it is testing yourself against the highest level of competition you possibly can.
I got you. We've been talking to Gene Henley, writer for the Chattanooga Times-Free Press, and we encourage you to follow him at Gene Henley3 on the Twitter machine, on the X machine. As we get you out of here, is there anything Mocs-wise, football-wise, that we haven't covered that Alabama fans or the college football fans in general just need to know about UTC as they go into the final week of the season with a playoff bubble the next day?
Yeah, they did. They actually, I believe. Let me make sure I'm right on this. I'm pretty sure they have an Alabama alum. Well, obviously, Lorenzo Ward is the defensive coordinator. For Chattanooga. I'm actually working on a piece on him for Saturday. He was reminiscing on, I think it was the 1990 game against Auburn or somebody. There was a game in 1990 where they were up 16-0. He suffered a concussion. He woke up, they had lost 21-16. And they finished, I think, like number 3. It was the year that not Bama, but Miami and Washington, I think, split the national championship. But they have a kid named Jake Hall who was, I believe, a long snapper for Alabama. I'm not sure if he graduated or not. I'm thinking he did. He did. He was at Bama. He was on the Bama roster for all 4 years of his college career. And he's been at Chattanooga for 2 years, and this could be his last game. But it's one of those cool moments where, possibly his last game is at the place that he played his college career, played the majority of his college career. He's from Saraland, Alabama. Not sure proximity, but certainly
South Alabama. They have a powerhouse football team.
Yeah. Okay. And so he was there, I think, 5-6 years ago. So it's a really cool moment for him to get back on that field. Although somebody told me earlier this week that if you asked him to get anywhere around that stadium, he couldn't do it. Like he couldn't. I don't think he could get to the visitors' locker room if you asked him, because why would he know? And I'm not sure he could get to the home locker room unless there's a specific way. But yeah, I think little cool moments like that, to see a bunch of kids that are from the state of Alabama, probably like 15 to 20 of them that are from the state of Alabama, getting a chance to play a game at a place that a number of them, there's some Auburn fans on that team too, I've heard. I don't know. One kid, I know they've got 2 Cam Browns. There's one Cam Brown whose older brother was a defensive lineman for Auburn a few years ago. I can't remember his name, but I think he was a pro. But
Derek Brown.
Yeah, that's his brother. And so, like, cool moments, for so many of these kids that grew up in the state of Alabama, knowing about the rivalry, knowing all this stuff, knowing all the stuff that goes along with playing in that, in Bryant-Denny Stadium. I think that'll be really cool for so many people involved.
It's going to be a blast on Saturday. Will you be in town, Gene, or are you watching it from the couch?
I will probably be watching this one from the couch because of the uncertainty of the playoff and the whole, what's it called? Budgets. So you got to pick and choose your battles, and this is one I'm not sure that I'm going to choose in favor of. But I certainly love the area. I've been down there I was there in 2016 with Chattanooga. I was there in 2019 when they did the light thing for the Tennessee-Bama game. I've been there a couple times, and obviously it's a great time. Amazing food in the press box. Probably the best SEC venue I got to. So.
And we
good.
do appreciate the Bryant-Denny staff who takes care of us in the press box. Absolutely. Gene, this has been a blast for me. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that Saturday goes smoothly for you. Make sure you follow Gene Henley at the Chattanooga Times-Free Press. You can subscribe right there for all his great work and follow him at Gene Henley 3 on the Twitter machine. And hopefully, outside of Saturday, UTC gets in the playoffs. You get a little more work to do on football before it fully goes into basketball.
I don't mind it at all, man. Hey, thanks again for having me. I certainly appreciate it.
Absolutely. This has been Gene Henley joining us on the Joe Gaither Show. Hope you have a great day, Gene. Enjoy the weekend.
Hey, you too, man. Thank you.
Yes, sir. As Gene Henley joining us, and that was great. I mean, he gave us more UTC talk than we did yesterday with Sutton Smith. Yesterday was basically like, what are we doing playing this game? So now you actually know about the Mocs. Been close throughout the years, throughout this year. Played Furman to a defensive battle, played Western Carolina to an offensive shootout. Just didn't quite get over the hump in those certain games, and that puts them on the playoff bubble. And we'll see what they end up doing on Saturday. It's going to be another fun day for Kool-Aid McKinstry and Terrion Arnold in the secondary, dealing with that passing game. Coach Saban very complimentary of the passing game last night in the Naylor Stone media room. And so we were going to want to pay attention to Chase Artopoulos, UCLA transfer quarterback, Chase Artopoulos. And so we'll see what he can do with the Mocs. And yes, as our friend Julian Lee said, anything can happen. Alabama is a 45.5-point favorite, yes, but she commented on the Facebook side, just like you guys can comment on the Facebook side at Joe Gaither 6, that not to take UTC lightly. Excuse me, don't take them lightly. Remember UL Monroe from 2007. And yeah, I mean, I don't expect Alabama to have a close game, but I think that you're going to want to keep the pedal to the metal this weekend, especially with where Alabama is, especially where Alabama is in the playoff ranking. We talked about it with Sutton Smith yesterday, that we kind of think the USF win, the struggle win with USF, is hurting Alabama more than any loss. So, even the Texas game. So you don't want to have a struggle win on Saturday. We don't want to have a struggle win with UTC. You want to go out there and beat the brakes off of them, respect what they're going to do, respect what they're going to bring to Bryant-Denny Stadium. Hope they leave without injury, but you're going to want to beat the brakes off of them at 11 a.m. and start getting ready for the Auburn Tigers. All right, so that's going to do it for right now. Here's going to be the plan of the rest of the day. If you're watching us live, I'm going to be joined by a correspondent from Missouri and from Mississippi State at later points in the day. So we will be going back live on the social medias at Joe Gaither 6 on all the social medias. If you're listening to this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on Amazon, then it's going to turn right into the Missouri and Mississippi State conversations that we're going to have with our correspondents at MizzouCentral.com and Cowbell Corner. Same thing if you're watching us on the Bama Central YouTube channel. This is about to break and cut right into those two interviews. But if this is all you've got for us today, you've been watching us live, I really appreciate you guys. Appreciate you, Julian Lee, sending me your comments, questions, queries, and complaints. You can follow us at Joe Gaither 6 on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, wherever you can get your podcasts at the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com. But if you want to see it a little bit more later in the day, we're going to talk Missouri. Josh Heupel, little Eli Drinkwitz controversy. Definitely going to talk some Missouri. We're going to talk some Mississippi State as well. Who the hell are they going to hire as their coach after firing Zach Arnett? We'll do that with our Missouri correspondents and Mississippi State correspondents coming up next on the Joe Gaither Show right here on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com. Good afternoon, Tuscaloosa, West Alabama, Internet world, right here on the Joe Gaither Show. You're watching us right here on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, you're listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on Amazon. We're back for a little more on our Thursday edition. We've already talked to our friend. We've already talked to one of our friends to talk about UTC, but we are moving on to Cowbell Corner. We're going to talk a little Mississippi State Bulldogs. We're going to talk about what the heck is going on over in Starkville as they fired Zach Arnett. And to do that, we're going to welcome on Kensi Brandenberg. Kensi Brandenberg joins us from Cowbell Corner. You can follow her right there at Kensington Brand Touche. You heard her last week on the Joe Gaither Show, and we're proud to be back on Cowbell Corner to find out what in the world is going on in Starkville. What the heck? You fired Zach Arnett 4-6. Kensi, how is your week going? Have you got any sleep keeping up with all the news over there in Stark Vegas?
Well, it has been a wild week after the news about Zach Arnett being fired. So there's been a lot of rumors, a lot of news. And after hearing about what Zach Selman, the athletic director, had to say about it, he has brought in an interim coach, Greg Knox, to take over the last 2 games of the season. But we are still waiting for updates on who may be our next head coach.
What do you think about Greg Knox? What has the athletic director said about Greg Knox? He was an analyst, and he's been promoted to head coach. You've got Southern Miss, and you've got Ole Miss left on the schedule. 2 games, both of pretty significant importance to the general Mississippi State fan. If you can go 1-1, you're okay, I guess. But if you go 2-0, you're really happy. 0-2, and you're feeling really, really, really awful. What's the outlook on the last 2 games, and what do you know about Greg Knox?
Well, for the last 2 games, we need both of those to secure bowl eligibility. So there comes a little bit of high tension when you can lose both and take a okay season with 4 wins, but in going 1-1, then the next 2 weeks, that would be good. But what we're really aiming for is 2-0, not just for the victories, but also so that we can have that bowl eligibility. And if Greg Knox knows what the team needs to do for the next 2 weeks, and I believe he's got what it takes to get the Bulldogs there.
Well, it's going to be a huge task. I mean, you're going to probably beat Southern Miss. I mean, that you beat them on talent alone. You got them at home. You get a little rejuvenation in the locker room with the new coach. But the big deal is the Egg Bowl. I mean, it's a huge deal in the state of Mississippi. People kind of overlook it because it's not the Iron Bowl. It's not the Iron Bowl. It's not, I guess, Georgia, Florida. It's not some of the other rivalries in the SEC. But if you are a proponent, if you watch the Egg Bowl each and every year, it's one of the nastier rivalries in the SEC. It's a big deal. And Ole Miss is having a really great season. I mean, obviously going to Athens this past weekend and losing, not good for the for the Rebels' point of view, but having a really good season. Your only losses are at Alabama and at Georgia. What's the thoughts on can Mississippi State beat Ole Miss in that Egg Bowl with an interim coach?
Well, I think it will be a real challenge. I don't know if we are fully there yet, but I know that the Bulldogs will give it all they have. Thankfully, we will probably be getting Will Rogers back, so hopefully we'll have our QB1 leading the team once again. And I don't know if that will have what it takes to beat Ole Miss, but they will be putting all they have into this game to try and take the state title.
Yeah, it's going to be a huge 2 weeks left in Bulldog country, but really the next couple of months are even bigger as you look at who's going to be the next head coach. Kensi, what are you hearing over there in Starkville? Who's going to be the next head coach? You're hearing a lot of weird names: Dan Mullen, Joey Chadwell. What's your feeling, and what are you looking for in the next head coach?
Well, I think what we're really looking for is someone who can really take forward with the offense. I know our defense was pretty good this year. We did struggle a lot with our offense. So hopefully that whoever we bring in will have more experience with the offense. I know Zach Arnett had previously been a defensive coordinator, so he did really well with getting that defensive side up and strong. But I think that next season we're going to be looking for someone more with offensive background who can really get our quarterbacks more stronger, especially since we most likely won't have Rodgers next year, and also who can just lead the whole team all together. But as for who it will be, I know that there are a lot of rumors going around, and personally, I'm not sure who it will be. We're still looking, and hopefully, whoever it is will have what it takes to get the Bulldogs back on their feet, back to winning games. I know there was a lot of talk about Dan Mullen, so we'll see where that goes if he wants to come to Starkville.
Well, were you around at all during Dan Mullen's last time over in Starkville?
I was not, unfortunately. I've only been in Starkville this is my second year in Starkville, so it's all pretty new.
Where are you from, Kensi?
I'm from Nashville, Tennessee,
Oh,
but
nice.
originally Ohio, so I keep from the north and keep going south. So I'm still learning all the SEC sort of things, but it's really awesome.
Yeah, so Dan Mullen was there for a handful of years, 5 years, 2012 to 2017. Is that right? 17 or 18. He had Mississippi State up to number 1 in the college football playoff rankings with Dak Prescott for about 2 weeks.
Well, having him been Dak Prescott's head coach, I'd say that if he were to come back, I'd say that'd be a perfect thing for our team, especially with where Dak is now leading the Cowboys and they're having an excellent season. So, this is his 8th straight season starting for the Cowboys. So, if we can have a coach like Mullen back, I think that we'd be golden.
Well, I'm really excited to see what Mississippi State does. Like, what's the output or what's the expectation for Mississippi State? I mean, you're not going to be competing with the Alabamas of the world, but I mean, you fired. I was never impressed with Zach Arnett. I was never impressed with Zach Arnett because I didn't really love his leadership style. I don't know how much time you got to spend around him, but I feel like, okay, you gave the guy just less than 1 year. The next guy, are you going to be committed to him? Jamie Chadwell is seen as kind of the front runner. You got Jeff Lebby over at Oklahoma as well. Tom Herman kind of out there. I really like Lance Leopold as one of your big names, the head coach at Kansas. But really, if you're thinking about it, I mean, you've been in Starkville a couple of years now. What do you think a realistic expectation is from the next head coach of the Mississippi State Bulldogs?
I really think it's going to have to be someone who can take offense and kind of turn around what we have right now. I know I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but the head coach of Liberty, who has led the team 10-0, and
yeah.
there were some rumors about him being in Starkville and talking to the staff. So if he comes in, if he can do the same thing he did with Liberty, then that would be absolutely what our team needs.
All right. Well, I'm asking you more from what do you think? What's the thing as a real? Because Mississippi State's gonna finish probably last in the SEC West this year. Maybe second to last, beating out Arkansas. What, that big old 7-3 victory?
Yeah.
But no, you're going to finish probably second to last or last in the SEC West. What's a realistic expectation for? Let's say you get Jamie Chadwell. We're just hypothetically, you get Jamie Chadwell. We're satisfied being third in the West. I mean, you're not going to have divisions anymore. So you're basically playing an all 16 team, 1 through 16. Okay, we're satisfied being what, 14th or better, 15th, 13th or better, because you've got Vanderbilt. You're always going to have, thank God for Vanderbilt, I guess. But like, what's the right expectation for Mississippi State to have with their next head coach?
If we can get a ranking that's maybe above 12 at least. I mean, I don't expect us to be number 1 next season or even in the top 5, but as long as we can shoot up from where we are, I mean, that's not a super far place to shoot up from. So as long as we can get someone who can at least get us in the top, the top 10 would be probably the most, that's a big dream, but a new head coach could potentially get us there. However, I'd say in the top 12 is probably where we would want to shoot for. We may have Arkansas again next year, especially since after they played us, they fired their offensive coordinator right after. So we'll always have Arkansas as well as Vanderbilt. And along with that, we could have some other surprises depending on how other seasons go with the other teams in the SEC. So whoever it is needs to get us at least above where we are now, and that's not a hard place to get away from.
Right. The only place you can go is up. We're talking to Kensi Brandenberg of Cowbell Corner. We're happy to be on Cowbell Corner with our partnership with BamaCentral.com. You can watch us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on Amazon. We've been talking about Mississippi State and the football program, obviously firing Zach Arnett. Tell me about the feel on campus of firing Zach Arnett. Is it indifferent? Everybody doesn't care about football? I mean, or is it, this has been a great move. We're really supportive of firing this guy, or everybody acted too soon? What's been your general feel of what, the reporters that you've talked to, the students that you've talked to, you're right there on the ground in Starkville. Is everybody supportive or indifferent, or are they, questioning this move?
Well, as this season's gone on, it started out with a lot of energy trying to see what Zach Arnett could do, but then as it continued and it was loss after loss, I mean, our students ended up shouting from the student section, "We want Mike, we want Mike," wanting Mike Wright to go in. And
Sure.
of course, Arnett, in a post after that happened, in the post game press conference, Arnett said, "I don't listen to the student section." And Will Rogers said the exact same thing. They said, "I don't listen to what they say." So, I mean, they're not going to listen to the students, and that means the students stopped coming. I mean, you would look at the section right after, you look at the whole stadium right after the second half, and no one's there. Everyone's gone. So, since the energy was down, there was just no hype around football anymore. However, as soon as it was released that Zach Arnett had been fired, you had this huge eruption of excitement from fans and especially from students, and everyone was so supportive of this. They were happy to see him go, and now it's just the waiting and the silencing, who's going to be next and who's going to have the team better next season.
Well, it'll be very interesting to see who Mississippi State hires, and you'll be able to follow it on cowbellcorner.com with Kensi Brandenberg. All right, let's flip it to basketball. Basketball is in its infancy of its season. The Bulldogs are 3-0. They've started off pretty well with wins over Arizona State, UT Martin, and North Alabama. So you got some pretty decent wins right there. Your next up is going to be against Washington State in a Hall of Fame Classic over there in Euconsville, Connecticut. So it looks like that's going to be kind of an ESPN game. And then they'll be playing either Northwestern or Rhode Island in a little charity classic for around Thanksgiving. So that comes up actually in 2 to 3 days. What's been the general feel of the basketball team? Obviously, Tulu Smith is still hurt, right? What's the feel of the basketball program, the early season, kind of how we're feeling about the Bulldogs on the hard court?
Well, right now, since we've come out really strong, there's a lot of excitement, especially not just with men's, but also with women's basketball. It seems like it's because of how football has performed. Now everyone's switching and putting all their hope into basketball. So since there's been so much hype, it's been really fun to see the Bulldogs win and come out really strong. And they've just They've done renovations to Humphrey Coliseum, which look amazing. And so I really have a good feeling about this season. I think that the Bulldogs are going to come out strong. If we get Tulu Smith back for when we start our conference games, then we would be absolutely ready to go, ready to even do better than we did last year. And last season, we did a lot better than expected. So hopefully this season it will keep going, because our incredible coach Chris Jans, I mean, he's had his extension for this year for a lot. So I think that what he's got planned for the Bulldogs is to continue playing the way we've been playing and winning more games and just seeing an excellent season.
Well, Kensi, tell everybody about what you're doing at Cowbell Corner, what you're going to be working on over the next couple of weeks. You got Thanksgiving break coming up, hopefully, but there's no break for the media world. What have you got going on for the rest of the next couple of weeks with the last little bit of football season?
Right. Well, we're keeping up with basketball. We're even shouting out some of our smaller sports, soccer and volleyball, who have been doing incredible. I mean, soccer has made it past the first round of the NCAA tournament. So
who y'all
we're
playing?
keeping
Who's
up.
State playing?
I cannot remember that off the top of my head, but they have been doing incredible in all the smaller sports. I mean, yesterday volleyball beat Auburn, and so they've gotten 4 or 5 conference wins right now. They also beat Ole Miss, and so the smaller sports are also having great seasons. Where we're covering that. We're expecting to see a lot from football, just talking about what could be, and also covering what's happening. So there will be a lot of that, and just continuing to keep up with all things that State has going on in the athletic world.
Well, you can follow her at Kensington Brand 2 and read her on Cowbell Corner. Where else can they follow you or get to know you, Kensi?
Twitter for sure, and definitely maybe LinkedIn.
Oh, that's cool. Whatever. Yeah.
All over the place. I'm on every social, but definitely Twitter for sure.
All right, so we will keep up with Cowbell Corner, keep up with Mississippi State, who they're going to hire, and we'll be following up with Kensi or one of her cohorts next week right here on Cowbell Corner and on the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com. Good to see you, Kensi. We'll chat up with you next week.
Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. That's Kensi Brandenberg. Goodness gracious. Kensi Brandenberg joining us for her weekly appearance. We're talking about Mississippi State. We're talking about Missouri. We're going to be catching up with Missouri here in just a little bit on the Thursday edition of the Joe Gaither Show. We already heard from Gene Henley talking about UTC earlier in the episode. So keep it locked in. If you are watching us live, we'll be signing back in about 3 o'clock. If you're listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on Amazon, we'll be coming right back with a little Missouri talk right here on the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central, BamaCentral.com, CowbellCorner.com, MissouriCentral.com. It's a lot of fun right here on the Joe Gaither Show. Good afternoon, Tuscaloosa, Internet World, West Alabama. One more time. We're going to do this third time's a charm on a wonderful Thursday. Welcome back into the Joe Gaither Show right here on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com. We've had the pleasure of talking to Gene Henley of the Chattanooga Times-Free Press today. We've talked to Kensi Brandenberg of Cowbell Corner today. And now we're going to be talking to Joey Van Zummeren of MizzouCentral.com. So we're going to round it out with another SEC perspective. Joey Van Zummeren, you can follow him at JoeyVZ_ on the Twitter machine, on the X machine. Joey, how's your Thursday going, sir?
It's going great. I appreciate you having me on, Joe. And Mizzou is making an exciting season to talk about, so I'm looking forward to this.
Absolutely. It is an exciting season. Are you standing on business today? And what I want to know, Joey, is do you think that Eli Drinkwitz knew what that phrase meant before the week started last week?
Definitely not. Although I will say Drinkwitz has surprised me a little bit in his knowledge of slang terms. I think some of his players have educated him a bit on that. I mean, earlier in the season, he said something like that his offense coordinator, Kirby Moore, was in his bag. So I was proud of him for pulling that one out, but I don't think he understood what standing on business or business, as he said, meant before last week.
Oh, for the unknowing or the people who haven't paid attention to Missouri football over the last couple of years, obviously it's a great year so far, top 10. But why? What's the controversy? I follow it so far, but for the people who don't know, what's the controversy between Missouri and Tennessee? Why would he go up and shake his hand in that fashion?
Sure. So there has been quite a bit of bitterness in this matchup over the past few years. Mizzou lost, I believe, the last 4 matchups going into that game last weekend. And in the past 2 matchups in 2022 and then in 2021, Tennessee, I believe, scored 60 and Mizzou somewhere around 20 in both those games. And especially, so, in last year's game, Tennessee, they were winning 59-7, something like that, 59 and 20, somewhere around that range. There was 40 seconds left in the game, and Josh Heupel comes in and calls a timeout so that they can run in another touchdown to get to 66. So then this year comes, and Missouri is a completely different team, and Eli Drinkwitz takes advantage of the opportunity, and when Mizzou is leading 36-7, Tennessee, for some reason, wants to attempt a field goal with 40 seconds left. So Drinkwitz comes over and makes sure to take a timeout and ices the kicker. And it worked. The Tennessee kicker missed the field goal. So I was honestly surprised. You could tell how personal this game was for Mizzou, its players, and Coach Drinkwitz. Usually Drinkwitz is I would say he's humble, but that's not even the right word. But usually he's not the type of guy to, or at least this year, to take that opportunity to take that timeout. But he talked about after the game how personal this game was, and they were obviously felt very disrespected from Tennessee's timeout last year to get to 66. So I'm sure that was a very sweet moment for Drinkwitz there.
Absolutely. It's been a season full of sweet moments, and we're proud over at Bama Central to be partnered with Mizzou Central. So, Joey, tell us about Mizzou Central. Tell us about yourself. What are you doing up there in Columbia, Missouri?
Sure. So I just Christopher Walsh, who runs Mizzou or Bama Central, he just got on board with Mizzou Central. I believe they started back up around mid-October because people realized, hey, Mizzou is doing very good, and it would be good to have some more coverage on them. So it's been great these past few weeks. I've been covering football and men's basketball and women's basketball. So it's been a busy crossover season, but it's been a lot of fun too. And we're putting out a lot of great content. We have a great staff of students here at Mizzou's prestigious journalism school. So it's been a great opportunity to work with them.
Well, you can follow Joey Van Zummeren at JoeyBZ_ on the Twitter machine, on the X machine. Make sure you're following all of his great work at MizzouCentral.com. Okay, what's your favorite moment from Missouri's great year so far? I mean, obviously, you go down to Athens and lose, and that stinks. You lose at home to LSU, that kind of stinks. But you've got great wins. You go over and beat the brakes off of Kentucky. You obviously, you beat Vanderbilt, okay, no big deal. You embarrassed South Carolina, pretty good. No, Missouri's had a pretty fun year. Had pretty good year to brag about. In the top 10 season so far. Playing Florida this weekend. What's been some of your favorite moments of the year so far?
Man, the two that jump to mind are two plays on special teams. First off, Harrison Mevis's was it 63-yard kick against Kansas State to win that game. That game will stick with me for a long time, just because, seeing how the season has played out, it's not as much as an upset for Mizzou to beat Kansas State. But then early on in the season, it really seemed like a David versus Goliath match. Kansas State was ranked as 15th. Mizzou, they were 2-0, but their 2 wins came against South Dakota State and then Middle Tennessee State. And their win against Middle Tennessee State, it was 23-19, and it was a pretty ugly win. And from the press conference afterwards, I mean, you go back and listen to that, you would have thought it was a loss for Mizzou. It was not a good performance. So having that game against Kansas State, where really it wasn't even like Kansas State was, I guess, playing down to their competition, or at least that's what people might have viewed it as at the time. But like Mizzou was just in that fight for the whole time. They were able to go punch for Kansas State. And then obviously that thrilling Harrison Mevis kick, fans rushing the field, that was amazing. And then the other play being Luke Bauer's fake putt touchdown in Kentucky. I was there for that game. Awesome to go to Kentucky Stadium there. And really, I feel like that play kind of, I wouldn't say a turning point because things were going well before then, but I also just think that, at that point, it was early or late in the second half, and Mizzou was trailing 14-0, and they were about to punt it to Kentucky and possibly could have gone down 3 possessions. So that touchdown from Bauer was, I think, very important in having Mizzou go on to win that game. I think they ended up outscoring them something like 30-7 after that fake punt. So definitely those 2 special teams plays are very memorable for me.
All right, so one of the early games in the season, Eli Drinkwitz comes into the post-game press conference and says, "I can't believe the students in the crowd were booing the starting quarterback, booing Brady Cook. He's the starting quarterback." Joey, that wasn't you. You weren't booing Brady Cook, were you? And building off that in a more serious fashion, what's been the key to the success for the Missouri Tigers this year?
Sure. So first with Cook, I think it all starts with him. I think he is definitely, along with Cody Schrader, a main storyline for this season. He definitely embodies the motto that Mizzou has claimed this year of something to prove. Not only because of, that situation was before the Kansas State game, which adds a lot to it. I mean, it became easy to forget with how well Brady Cook was playing that. No, that was not me. I was in the press box watching that. You know, it was easy to forget that, you know, he split time with Sam Horn in that first game. There was, or, you know, you can say what you want about what Drinkwitz's ideas. He probably favored Cook the whole offseason. But, you know, he was in a quarterback competition with Sam Horn this offseason, a four-star sophomore out of Georgia. And then in that Kansas State game, gets booed by the student section before the game, didn't have too great a performance against Middle Tennessee State. And then he just goes out there and absolutely lights it up against Kansas State. He gets injured before the second half on a run. And then he comes out back again in the second half and continues to play an amazing game. So, you know, he has definitely been, you know, I don't want to like label anybody as the most valuable player because there's a lot of them on Mizzou, and I don't think there's one player that you can attribute it to. But I think, you know, there was a lot of Mizzou fans and, you know, even people outside of Mizzou who expected this team to again go, you know, at or around 500 on this season. And I think the biggest difference for why they have lived above expectations is the fact that Brady Cook has been not only a reliable starting quarterback and the fact that you aren't as worried that he's going to turn the ball over as you were last year, but also just the fact of he's been more than reliable. He has been good. He has stepped up in the big moments that the team kind of folded in last year. You know, the team had a lot of one-score losses last year. So he has been a big difference for this team. And, you know, just some other things that have been going well and how Mizzou has been able to turn this over. I think it's all on the offense. Kirby Moore, like I mentioned earlier, the first offense coordinator that Drinkwitz has ever employed. And he has been doing an amazing job. Obviously, the brother of Kellen Moore. And I think especially this last weekend against Tennessee really showed what Kirby Moore brings to this team because they had to find a different formula to win. Luther Burden, their star wide receiver, he was playing, but he was dealing with an ankle injury. So they were pretty much mainly using him as a decoy. He had that great touchdown at the end of the game. But, you know, they had to get creative, and they were going up against a really good rushing defense in Tennessee, and Cody Schrader absolutely, I think, obliterated is a fair word for his 300-yard total performance. So they just used a lot of motion, got really creative in order to beat Tennessee. The offensive line has really stepped up compared to last year. They were just yesterday nominated for the Joe Moore Award for the best offensive line in the country. And last year, that was another thing that one did not help Brady Cook's play. And then also, you know, the offense as a whole. And this year, they've really stepped up. They've made it easy for Cody Schrader, who has praised them quite a bit. And, you know, you look at the offensive line, and I think it makes sense that they've been able to gel together. They have some older guys on there like Javon Foster, Xavier Delgado. They brought in Cameron Johnson, a transfer from Eastern Michigan. And then also their center, Connor Tollison, who struggled last year. He was a freshman starting. So, you know, it makes sense that he had some struggles a little bit. So they've really gelled together. So the offense has been the main talking point, and then the defense had a really great season last year. It took them a little bit this season to kind of return to that form, but over these past few weeks, I think starting with that second half of the Kentucky game that we mentioned earlier, they have really turned it around.
All right, 8-2 on the season so far. Missouri Tigers hosting the Florida Gators this weekend, 11.5-point underdog. Real quick, get us out of here, Joey Van Zummeren. What's going to be the breakdown of this weekend's game against the Florida Gators?
Sure. I think this is a really favorable matchup for Mizzou. You look at a Florida defense that has been struggling with containing the explosive plays, and that has been what Mizzou has thrived on, at least in games where Cody Schrader, you know, doesn't have 300 yards. Mizzou has gotten plenty of explosive plays with Luther Burden and also a very fast freshman wide receiver, Marquise Johnson. So I think that's a great sign for Mizzou. And then also Florida as a whole defensively has been struggling. You look at their defensive line that has kind of been pushed around by other offensive lines. Even like you look at Arkansas just 2 weeks ago. So I think, this Mizzou offense likes to utilize a lot of wide zone blocking. So I think they're going to have their way with this Florida defensive line and open up plenty of holes for Cody Schrader. And I just, as far as Florida's offense, I like what Graham Mertz is doing. I have a lot of friends in Wisconsin who are Badgers fans who I heard the book on Graham Mertz was very good in his first few games as a Badger, and then kind of tapered off after that. But he's been impressive in Florida this season, but I don't know if they're going to have the offense to match up with Mizzou's that it could have a great day against Florida's defense.
Well, Florida plays like dog poo outside of the swamp, so I feel like it's going to be another big old win for the Missouri Tigers, getting into contention for New Year's Six bowl game. Looks like they're probably going to be out on the playoff poll, but New Year's Six, hell yeah, great job, Eli Drinkwitz.
Yes.
They'll keep building off that. Joey Van Zummeren, follow him at JoeyVZ_ on the Twitter machine, and make sure you guys are following everything they're doing at MizzouCentral.com. Joey, we'll keep up with you and your team over here at BamaCentral.com. I appreciate your time, man. Hope you have a great day.
Awesome. Thank you for having me on, Joe.
Yes, sir. That's Joey Van Zummeren talking to us from MizzouCentral.com. We talked to Kensi Brandenberg from CowbellCorner.com. We talked to Gene Henley of the Chattanooga Times-Free Press. It was an action-packed day. It was an action-packed episode. You now know a good bit about the UTC Mocs. You know what's going down on Saturday with their passing game. And really, UTC close, but not quite good enough in the FCS level. Hopefully, we'll see, root for our opponents on Sunday to get into the FCS playoffs. They're at that point, it's no harm for Alabama. We'll continue to follow our friends at Mississippi State at Cowbell Corner to figure out what in the world they're going to do with their coaching situation. I think, honestly, they made the right move in firing Zach Arnett. So follow Kensi Brandenberg at Kensington Brand 2 on the X Machine, and follow her at Cowbell Corner. And follow my man Joey Van Zummeren over at JoeyVZ_ on the X Machine at Mizzou Central, as Missouri having kind of a Cinderella season. We didn't talk any basketball, but I expect that will be on our slate next time we catch up with MizzouCentral.com as we're getting warmed up into college basketball season. So that's going to do it for our Thursday episode. You followed us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, on Amazon. You watched us live, maybe on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. You can watch us, all our episodes, at Bama Central's YouTube channel.com, Bama Central on the YouTube channel. And then, of course, follow us at BamaCentral.com with a Sports Illustrated home for your Alabama Crimson Tide. Our other Bama Central Broadcasting Network podcast is Blue Collar Unplugged with Blake Byler, Matthew Gibson, and Jacob Pickle. Alabama basketball going to be back in action on Friday night against Mercer. We'll be in Coleman Coliseum covering all the action, and then turning around on Friday doing a little bit of Alabama Senior Day against UTC. So follow us tomorrow. We'll be back at noon, live at noon for Football Friday. It'll be myself. We'll see whoever else we can find. It'll probably be Katie Wyndham and Austin Hannon tomorrow at noon for Football Friday. That's going to do it for our episode today. Hope you had a great day. Enjoy your Thursday. We'll be back for another episode of the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com.